Welcome to Mindful School Marketing, your go-to podcast for personal and professional growth.
We're school marketers, business owners, and moms passionate about connecting other school professionals with tools and strategies for success.
We love solving problems, exploring new ideas, and thinking outside the box. Let's transform your school and life starting right now.
This episode is brought to you by Enquiry Tracker. Easily manage all your inquiries, tours, open houses, and applications with a system designed by K-12 education marketing and admissions professionals. Welcome to Mindful School Marketing. I'm Tara Clays.
And I'm Aubrey Bursch. Today, we're joined by Charlie DeWhitt. Charlie is a former director of marketing, recruitment, and communications for a school network in Indiana and a current enrollment consultant with SchoolMint, where she helps schools to attract and enroll more students. She has a passion for helping schools shine a light on the amazing things happening in their classroom. Welcome, Charlie. We're so excited you're here.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. This is a topic of great interest and intrigue, so we're very excited to dig into it. But first, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, awesome. I am a former teacher, so started my career teaching pre-K and then high school Spanish. Decided to venture outside the classroom, did some years in technical recruiting and consulting, and then wound up after my daughter was born, joining a charter school network here in Indianapolis, where I help support recruitment and communications and marketing efforts. And then after a couple years of doing that, made the switch over to SchoolMint, where I help other schools, right, do the stuff that I wish I would have known how to do when I first started. So everything from like training courses to helping with SEO and enrollment microsites, all sorts of that kind of stuff. And on a personal note, we're big outdoors people, so hiking, kayaking, big donut fans. So we have a running bracket of the best donut places in the Indianapolis area. So if you're ever hungry for a donut, I can hook you up. But yeah, no, that's a little bit about me.
Very fun. So yeah, jelly donuts or any kind. What's your favorite kind of donut?
I love like a good maple donut. My husband loves the maple bacon one. So anywhere that has like a maple bacon donut is our favorite. My daughter got me, she tried like at a place where you go, you make your own, like dip them in whatever you want. A maple donut that's covered in Fruity Pebbles, and it is actually very good.
That does sound good. That does.
Really good. Yeah.
My kids would be all over that. They'd be like, yes, sign me up. Well, okay,
Yeah,
so we
Sunday.
can come to you for hiking and donuts is what I'm hearing. That's like,
I thought you covered. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that
awesome.
sounds great. I made an exception to my websites that I make for schools, and I have a donut shop website because why not? I mean, wouldn't you love to have a donut shop website?
Yeah. Wow.
Well, I'm super excited. So I had the privilege of communicating with Charlie about an article she wrote about Google Business Profile and specifically about Google reviews for schools. And so, Charlie, I'm excited to dive into this important topic. So to give a background to our audience, like, Tara and I and Charlie, we're all professionals who work with independent schools on marketing and Google Business Profiles, which was formerly Google My Business. I still sometimes slip up and say it. And like a lot of us are saying, this is one thing that schools should optimize, right, to improve their digital presence. And one part of the Google Business Profile, an extremely important part, is the Google reviews. And as we know, parent and student reviews on platforms like Google build that know, like, and trust factor for schools. So for those of you wondering if reviews are worth, is this worth diving into? It is, because according to niche.com, they did a great, very robust parent survey. 65% of prospective families said reviews and testimonials from other parents influenced their decision to attend a particular school. Yet Google reviews have been a source of tremendous frustration for schools over the past 4 years. So we're going to dive into a little bit about what's happening with Google reviews, what you can do about it. And Charlie's going to share her knowledge and some of the research she's been doing. So Charlie, can you share a little bit more about the history of what's happened with Google reviews and the challenges that schools are currently facing now with Google reviews?
Yeah. So when I first started school marketing, right, like it was like, you got to get your Google reviews, right? When people are looking for schools, they can see them right away. They're really easy to view on your Google business profile. And while SEO is kind of, search engine optimization, ranking at the top of the page is one of those things that there's no magic formula, right? And even if there was, Google wouldn't tell us about it. Reviews were thought to be something that can really help you rank higher, right? Like a lot of really good quality reviews, maybe, right, like improves your SEO, but it definitely improves your public perception. So I was working really hard to get families to leave good reviews. Anytime they would say like, hey, we love the school, I'd send them the link to the Google reviews profile and say, hey, would you mind doing this? And a lot of families were saying, for one of my campuses, they're like, again, I did that. Like, and I'm like, well, I didn't see it anywhere. And so I'm like, well, maybe it just takes a couple days to show up, or maybe, you need a certain amount, like there's a threshold I have to meet. So, this started, 4 years ago, right? Like it's been this ongoing kind of like, just like bug in my life that I'm like, gosh, I wish I could figure it out. And so after like reaching out, I was told it was a policy decision for that school. And I was like, well, that's odd. Just, moved on with my life, like ended up prioritizing other sites like Great Schools Niche, Facebook. And now here I am in this role. And I see that, I do a lot of Google business profile optimization and management for some of our clients. And I was seeing that there was some weird patterns of certain schools not being able to host reviews or display even their old reviews or get new reviews. And it was kind of all over the board. So I started digging in to try to figure out like, what is going on, and ended up having to go all the way up through the chain of Google technical support to figure out, what was going on and what we could do to fix it, which is unfortunately kind of where we are now.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. I mean, you just said that you saw a pattern, and I'm curious to know what that would be.
Yeah, so the pattern that I started seeing, and when I first noticed it, was that new schools were not being able to get reviews. So if I was opening a brand new school and claiming my Google business profile as a school from the get-go, no reviews. We noticed that with most of the new schools we're opening. So for a while I was like, well, maybe it's just like a new school thing. Like maybe that's, or like the first time you claim your account or something. That was my biggest guess, right? Now I've noticed that it's affecting, in my limited experience, private schools less. And it feels like it's impacting charter and public schools more. But they're only going off of your category, right? So they don't know, just from like your title, right? If you're a charter, public, or private school or parochial school. But just from my limited experience, it seems like it's stretching out now to cover more schools. But when it first rolled out, it felt like to me, the charter schools were the ones that were being kind of like shut down first. And now I've noticed that it's kind of spreading to the majority of our schools. And when I did reach out and I was like, hey, like this doesn't seem fair, right? It doesn't seem like a good practice to not have it be consistent. And I was told that, a big part of it is that if you're verified and you are claiming your category, right? You're saying like, I'm a school, that's usually when this will kick in. So, my question was, well, then should we even be verifying these accounts, right? Like if I leave it unverified, can I get reviews? And ultimately, my assumption is that it'll end up impacting everyone at some point. And the verification of your Google business profile is going to be worth more in the long run than the ability to have those reviews on Google, just for, SEO and accuracy and all of that kind of stuff that goes along with what you can do with a verified profile.
It's so intriguing. So, I saw the ups and downs. So we work primarily with independent schools. And so what we were seeing was definitely a freeze around like the COVID beginning and throughout.
Yes.
And then a lot of them were unfrozen, but no, by the way, there's never like, you never get an email saying you're frozen or you're unfrozen. You actually get no information.
No, and
so
the reviews don't know either, right? So they're out there thinking like, I've done this nice thing for the school and no one even said thank you to me. And that has to be so frustrating.
It is. And I think, it's interesting. So when I'm looking at my clients' Google business profiles, like I would say 75% are frozen. Like they've tried to get parent reviews. It's definitely not happening. And then there's that 25% that I'm like, if you still have it, you're lucky.
Yeah, and we'll use it, right? Yeah.
Yes, I like build it up now, but I do wonder, like, as we're talking about this, like, what do these schools do? So if it is frozen, and I think you indicated that this might just be a change for good, right? Like change, not for good, but change,
Forever.
like
Yeah.
a more permanent change. Like, what do schools do? In the world do they, I know one school has like had so many positive parent reviews, but then the last 4 to post were all negative. And so now that was 4 years ago, and they're stuck with those negative reviews. So what are your recommendations for schools in this situation?
And can I also ask a clarification here too? Like when we're talking about frozen, um, people can still leave reviews in most of these cases, right? There's still an opportunity to leave them, but they're not displaying, or is that a whole another situation, right?
Yeah,
So
parents think they're doing it, right?
Right.
Like it's like you can click the write a review button, but ultimately like nothing happens.
Right.
Which is, that's
worse. Yeah.
yeah, that's really frustrating. And like you said, right, and I've worked with schools too who are like, we've had, a really rough year, or we just had like, an incident or something. And then like, okay, no big deal. We can get some more positive reviews and kind of change the momentum, right? And it's like, well, now we can't, right? Like they pick the worst possible time to freeze our reviews. And, I've reached out to Google, I've asked about it. The line is that there's been a policy in place since 2018 where public institutions and public services, like doctors' offices, hospitals, schools, shouldn't have these kind of reviews. They don't want to unduly burden them, right? Which I'm sure we've all seen. Doctors' offices still have reviews up. I know I left my doctor a review, right? But it seems like schools are the ones that are really getting hammered. And like you said, during COVID, right, kind of made some sense. You're like, okay, people are trying to figure everything out. We don't want these schools to be burdened by, the pandemic on top of everything else, parents upset about how they're handling it, right? But it just seems like, it's not going away. And so we need to be strategic and kind of accept the fact that like it feels unfair and it feels bad, but we can't fix it, right? And there's no real incentive for Google to undo these policies, right? Like we're not paying customers, like it is what it is. So my recommendation has been to then take all of your review efforts and really target the sites that will show up as reviews on your Google profile on that side panel. So those are things like Great Schools Niche, Facebook, especially Facebook's really nice because most people like already have an account, right? And it's a really quick review process where it's like, would you recommend it? Yep. And then leave a comment. And then those people, right, their friends see it and like, oh, I trust this person who sends their kid there. And I don't know if anyone else is part of like local moms groups, but almost like invariably every day I open up my phone and I see, oh, my kid, we need to pick a school for my kid. Like, where would you recommend? So having that like built up stable of reviews native on that platform, especially for elementary school families, right, where the moms are in those groups and trying to figure out where they want to send their kid. I think those are really helpful. But again, right, Great Schools and Niche are also really great resources. And they give a lot more robust information about your school. And your little reviews will be displayed like 5 out of 5 from Niche or 3.5 out of 5 from Great Schools right on that profile. When people click it, they'll get taken to your profile site there. So, there's not much we can do in terms of, taking reviews down if they're true, right, and accurate and not, anything that's totally bananas that you can ask them to take down. But we can try to change the tide, right? And if as a parent, right, like I'm on a site and I see most of the reviews are fine, there's a couple recent negative ones on Google, but then I go over and see 5 out of 5 with 40 people on Great Schools and like 100 reviews on Facebook, I'm going to take those couple negatives with a grain of salt, understanding that it's a snapshot, not a full report.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if there are negative reviews, if they're old and your reviews are frozen, can you reply to them?
In some cases, I have been able to reply to old reviews. There have been cases where I've tried to reply and my replies don't show. So I don't know if that's like a Google decision on those. Once they freeze your account for a certain reason, it's frozen. I didn't get much information when I asked. I got it's a policy decision, which I don't know what policy it is. If you can reply, I don't think it's a bad idea. As long as obviously you keep it solution oriented and positive and not argumentative, right? Because when we start trying to argue facts, it doesn't make anybody look good. But it's totally fine to say, I'm so sorry you had that experience. Like, here's what we're doing to help, or please let us know how we can help you moving forward. Thanks for sharing, your feedback with us. I always think that that's a fine way to respond, but whether or not it shows up, you have to kind of do the work and test it out and figure out if it does or not, which is not an ideal answer.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm curious, like, we talk about Google reviews and we talk about they're potentially frozen on many of these sites. How do schools know, like all these schools out there listening to this, like, how do I know if my Google reviews are frozen? What is the step to take? Do they contact Google? Do they test out getting reviews?
Yeah, so that's a really tricky one, because there's not an easy way. It's not like you get like a snowflake logo that's like, hey, it's frozen or anything like that. That'd be a good idea. I'm gonna message Google. Like, that'd be a good idea.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I'm gonna be laughing about that the whole time. That's perfect.
Right. The best way, and you can always reach out to Google. Sometimes you won't get an answer for a while, or you'll get to the wrong department and they'll have to swap you over. You won't get a clear answer. I think the easiest way to do it is to just create a Google account and try to leave a review and see what happens. If you haven't had reviews in a while, especially if it's like pre-2018 is the last review you had, or if you have people that are saying, hey, I'm leaving your review and it's not showing up, most definitely you're frozen. Very few schools that I work with right now are not frozen. So my gut would say you probably are, but if you want to check, like, give it a shot with your personal Gmail or have a friend try it, and see what happens.
When it is frozen, is there anything you can do to like put a little message in your profile that says, hey, Google has blocked reviews for schools, don't leave one, or if you leave one and you don't see it, that's why. Is there any place you can put that message for people?
I wish there was, and really, like, you could put it in your profile, right? But then you're giving up some of those, I think, 750 words to tell people not to leave you a review. I think the better messaging, or the more effective messaging from my experience, is to, when you are reaching out to families, to ask for reviews, to say, hey, Google's not letting us get reviews. Like, please go to these sites. We'd really appreciate hearing about, your experiences with the school. And an even better tactic that I've seen some schools do that I think works really well is specifically targeting those requests, right? Because you don't need 100 good reviews, you need like 5 to 10, right? So reach out to kids who were in the school play and be like, hey, their parents, and send them a message and say, hey, I saw Emily in the school play, what a great job, she's shown so much growth this year. Parents like you are trying to make good decisions for kids like Emily. Would you mind leaving a review on Niche or Great Schools? Like, Google's not allowing us to have them anymore. So these are the best sites for people to learn about our school. And then those families, right? Obviously you took the time to message them and talk about their kid. And anytime anyone talks about my kid, I'm like, oh, I'm here for it. I want to hear about it. And then that encourages them to then go and do you the favor, right, of leaving a review.
Yeah, it should be Google's job to leave a message saying that the reviews are frozen.
I feel like it should be too, right? Or at least take that write a review button down, because parents were getting like kind of frustrated with me when I was like, hey, remember I asked you to do, and like, I did that. I'm like, well, it's not showing up. And then finally it clicked, and it's like, maybe the problem's not me or the parent. Maybe it's our Google profile.
Yeah, I think Google should have it. Like, there should be a little banner, or else take off the reviews. I mean, and that's going to lead to the next. So the next question I have, which is, so when you search schools near me, right, or private schools near me, or something like that, and your school comes up, and now it has Google review, like the reviews are frozen, and now we're looking at that 3-pack, right, that's come up.
Yep.
what's the impact on schools? Like, I mean, that's a first choice. Like that gives an overall picture to a prospective family about, your school in relation to the other schools in your area that are your competition. And if you have frozen reviews and the last reviews you had were not good, like where is this leaving schools?
Yeah, well, it's going to be a huge detriment, right? Especially because, like you said, right, that local 3-pack, or if you're on a map, right, and looking like what schools are closest to me, you get like the name, the address, and the stars, right? Like those are kind of like the 3 things you see first when you're looking. And so if you are a school that, even if you just have one bad review, right, and you're just one star, parents aren't usually going to click down to dig and be like, oh, it was only one, it was 3 years ago, and they just seemed like maybe they were having a bad day. So it really is detrimental to schools. And I wish that there was like an easy fix that I could say, but here's what you can do about it, right? And I haven't been able to come up with anything. And I have tried to think outside the box as much as I can, and work with Google. And unfortunately, it just seems like something that's just going to be unfair. Right. And so in those situations, what I'd say is you then have to do double the work, right, to get your website to rank as high as possible, in addition to your Google business profile, so that that's not the only thing families see when they're searching, and that you get those niche and great schools reviews and Facebook reviews as high as you can get them. Hopefully those parents will click and learn a little bit more. But other than, trying to get them hidden, right, which Google is pretty hesitant to do, which for good reason, right? We don't want businesses being able to hide every 1-star review they get. We want everyone to be accountable, but reach out to Google and ask like, hey, look, could we just get all the reviews taken down for this account since we can't get new ones? That feels like something that might be more likely to happen than trying to get your reviews reopened.
Sorry, was muted. So I want to also kind of dig in a little bit to then what the importance of Google Business Profile is. I mean, should to not give up on it, right? Even though the reviews are not working, if you can get those taken down, do you think it's still relevant for marketing?
Oh, it's super relevant, especially because, as we know, most schools are local searches, right? So when I'm searching for a school for my kid, I'm looking here where I live in Noblesville. I'm not looking, in Chicago, right? So those local packs on the map, right, where your Google Business Profile ranks, that's hugely important to your school, right? Those are the first things that people see when they're looking for searches like school near me, private school near me, kindergarten near me, right? All of those searches are going to pop up at the top, those local searches. So it's still really important. You want it to be filled out. You want accurate information. I've seen a lot where there's duplicates of schools, right, where they started in one space and moved, and now there's 2 addresses and different phone numbers. And we just want to make it easy for families to make a good decision. And in order to make it easy for them to engage with you, they have to be able to find you and find your accurate contact information. So verify your Google Business Profile. Make sure you've got the right main category and secondary categories, because those will definitely impact where you show up in searches. And something, just a little trick for Google Business Profiles that I've just experimented my way into is, a lot of times, especially with private and charter schools, their name doesn't have what they are in it, right? So they'll call themselves something, right? Like, like St. Mary's, and you're like, well, okay, you're a school, but no one Googling is going to know that. And Google's also looking at that and saying like, this doesn't seem like a school, right? Like, it's just called St. Mary's. So put in there like St. Mary's, Catholic elementary school, or, like Minty STEM charter school. That way, you're more likely to pop up for those like the keyword searches of like school near me, Catholic school near me. I found that that's really helpful. And even just doing that can make someone pop from like the 10th to the 2nd place like that. Just it happens really quickly. So claim your profiles, name them things that make sense, like for people searching, right? And then also don't forget to make sure your categories are set appropriately.
I'm so glad you gave those tips. I love reviewing people's Google business profile schools because it's so many are under optimized, right? And there's so much potential with this free tool. Yes, we're frustrated with the reviews, but still, like, there's so many options with the services, the products piece, the being able to update or feature events.
Yeah.
I know the booking links, and there's so many, and I'm seeing even more changes that Google is rolling out. There's some really interesting things that's happening with the Google business profile. But it's just, if we just spent like 30 minutes, like every month, just working on the Google business profile, I think it would go a long way for schools because it's definitely underutilized. And I'm wondering if you see, yes, it's free. It's a free tool, right? We're not paying for it. So thank you for those tips. I really appreciate that. Now, I'm going to transition our conversation to, as you know, we're called the Mindful School Marketing Podcast. So we do talk about mindfulness and how it applies to marketing in schools. So how would you define mindfulness, and how do you see it lived out in the work you do with schools and also personally, professionally?
Yeah, so I'm a yogi at heart, so mindfulness is right up my alley. But for me, mindfulness is just about being authentic and aware and present in what you're doing. And being really cognizant of the fact that the actions and the choices that you make have an impact on other people. And I think as a parent, right, like who's recently been through the process of like picking a school for my child, having that in your mind of the choices that I make on behalf of these schools and for these schools doesn't just impact the schools, right, and my company. There are real people out there trying to make real decisions for their families on where they send their kids to school. So I need to make sure that, I'm doing my job of, first of all, marketing well. Like I want them to be successful, my clients, but I also want to make sure that they're marketing in the right way to the right people at the right time to, enroll the students that are going to be successful and want to be there. So that's always kind of in the back of my mind of, all of our clients run great schools. I'm not, I'm not concerned about their students, but it is something to keep in mind where it's like, well, if I'm, working with a STEM school, like I want to make sure that I'm representing them in the right way to the right people. So that when people show up and they're like, but I really love orchestra, you guys don't have that, no one's disappointed, right? I always think that that's really, really important to be intentional about. And that's something that can sometimes get in the way, right, of your professional goals when you're like, oh, I want to get, 400 new students. And it's like, well, do I want 400 new students, or do I want maybe 350 students that are going to stay because they're the right fits? So that's kind of what I think of when I think of how mindfulness plays into school marketing.
Yeah, thank you so much. So much. Yeah, exactly. That's excellent. I appreciate it. So we are going to move on to our rapid fire questions now, which are really fun little questions we ask at the end of every episode. And the first one is my favorite, which is, if you could put one book as mandatory reading on a high school reading list, what would it be?
So I thought so hard about this. And I couldn't come up with an answer. And I think it's because I truly detested assigned reading in school. I felt like I was always reading stuff that didn't jive with me. And I had a teacher who we were reading a terrible assigned book. I can't even remember what it was. No one was into it. I was an A student and still wasn't reading it. I'm like, I just can't do it. And he looked at the class and was like, do you guys hate this book? And we're all like, yeah, it's awful. And he goes, we shouldn't read it. He goes, reading should be fun. This isn't fun. No one likes it. Go pick another book and do a book report on that. And I read Pride and Prejudice, and it became like my favorite book because I liked it and I picked it for myself. And I think that kickstarted like a very long, lifelong love of reading, because I'd always thought reading was kind of like, with the exception of Harry Potter, right? Like it was kind of boring. You had to read Shakespeare and things that didn't feel applicable to my life. So shout out to Mr. Beasley for canceling assigned reading.
We always remember those teachers, right? We always remember them, right?
Absolutely.
I felt the same way about my high school reading list. I was like, this is a very depressing list. Like horrible things happen in these books. Is there no optimistic, like positive outcome? That's funny that you brought, I very appreciate
the language is hard, right? Like when you're like, I don't understand half of what's happening. Like, and also like the cultural stuff from 300 years ago. I'm like, I don't know what this means. Like,
oh my gosh. Yes. Well, Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Now I'm curious about the answer for this next question. What is one app you couldn't live without?
Oh, but it's not an app. I'm gonna change the question a little bit, but I have been using ChatGPT. It has an app function, so it's kind of an app, but I am obsessed with it. I did a whole training on ways school marketers can use AI ethically. And I love it. My husband's that's his jam. He's like a machine learning software engineer, and we geek out over it all the time. It writes my daughter's bedtime stories every night. I like tell it to write a story about Daisy joining the
Oh
pod.
my gosh, that is fabulous.
It's
Oh,
amazing.
that's the most creative use I've heard of heard for a while.
Well, I showed
That's
my mom's a
awesome.
kindergarten teacher, and I showed her how to use it because she's like, I'd love to write stories about my kids. And I'm like, here you go. Just give it a list and tell it what you want it to write about. And she's like, are you kidding me? It's so cool. It's really, really, really cool.
That
And
is awesome.
people have debates about the ethics of it, and there are totally reasonable concerns. But there are also really great ways to use it to just make your life better, and be better at your job, and add some fun in, right, with some fun bedtime stories.
Yeah, that is really neat. I've used it too. We chatted with a guest who talked about that, but I'd love for you to share in the show notes if it's available, what you put together as well.
Yeah.
That was really neat. Okay, next question. Since you told us that you love reading, even though you're not a mandatory reading, what are you reading right now?
So I do a lot of travel. So I do a lot of audiobooks. I just finished a lesson in chemistry. I thought it was wonderful. And I just started, it's called Sensational, and it's a true story of stunt reporters, who were the girl investigative reporters back in the day, when women weren't really encouraged or allowed to kind of do those kind of jobs. So I'm only a couple minutes in, but it seems really good so far.
Great.
Ooh, that sounds like a great topic. We have like that Rebel Girls book where we read about all the amazing women that came before us.
Yes.
I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many women who did such hard things. So I love
I never heard about them until you pick up this book at Barnes and Noble. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. What is one great piece of advice you'd like to leave us with?
Oh, that's a good question. I think as it relates to this job, there is no such thing as someone who's an expert in school marketing, right? There's no degree in it. I see all the time so many people with imposter syndrome, right, who take our training course where they're just like, I'm not good at this. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm overwhelmed. And most of those people are doing a good job, right? And that they have creative ideas. So I think for anyone that's doing this type of work, my advice is, learn from people who have done it before, right? Take what you need, give back what doesn't serve you. But also don't let your fear or, feeling inadequate stop you from trying new things and learning. Marketing is all about failing, right? If everything I did worked, I would be a millionaire, right? Half of the stuff we try doesn't work, and then you try something else and it does. So I think my advice is just to, it's so cheesy, but I guess believe in yourself, and don't let that fear of not being good enough or not having the right degree or the right experience keep you from enjoying your job and doing a good job.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Charli. We really loved having you on the show today. Where can people find you online?
The best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. You can find me, Charlie DeWhitt.
Thank you again, Charli. This was amazing. I really appreciate this conversation. I know our school audience will as well.
Oh, I'm so glad. It was great chatting with you.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Inquiry Tracker is the all-in-one CRM solution used by over 250 schools. Easily manage all your inquiries, tours, and open houses. Key instant analytics help you manage and grow a robust pipeline. So end spreadsheets forever.
The smart online application system with powerful document upload is a game changer. No school is too small or too big, and their Fast Start program will get you up and running in no time.
Best of all, the system is designed by K-12 education marketing and admissions professionals. Check out Inquiry Tracker at inquirytracker.net. That's inquiry with an E, tracker.net.
Thanks for joining us on the Mindful School Marketing Podcast.
We'd love it if you pop into iTunes and leave a review, 5-star preferred. Let us know how you like the show. It helps us improve what we're doing and helps others find us too.